confidence is a muscle you train, not a destination you reach, and that every next level demands a different version of us. And we're now working with some of the top performers in the world, people that I thought had all of the confidence. I realized, I was like, oh, this never goes away. If I want to develop mastery in something, it's going to take exposure. It is not going to take reading a book. It is not going to take learning a new mindset. It is not going to take learning a strategy. It's going to be execution for a long enough period of time where then the scary thing becomes normal. If you're trying to get in great shape, don't go to the person that just won Mr. Olympia. Go to the person that's in extraordinary shape. The past does not determine the future unless we decide to live in that past.
Making sure you put yourself in those uncomfortable situations so that you continue to grow those muscles and you feel more and more comfortable as you expose yourself to these environments that challenge you to become a better version of yourself. Hello and welcome. I'm Seline Shenoy, and this is the Dreamcatcher Podcast, a space for thoughtful, unhurried conversations about how we live and what truly matters. I am really glad you're here. Have you ever wondered why some people move through the world with ease, speaking up, taking chances, pursuing opportunities, while others hesitate, overthink, and wait for the right moment to finally feel ready? What if confidence wasn't something you were born with at all, but something you could build through small, intentional choices? In today's episode, we're joined by Juan Bendaña, an internationally renowned speaker and author of the book Confident by Choice. Juan has helped hundreds of thousands of people develop the kind of confidence that isn't loud or performative, but grounded, repeatable, and real. His work breaks down confidence into a simple cycle of micro decisions that anyone can start applying today. In our conversation, we explore the myths that hold people back, the tools that create real self-trust, and how to transform fear into fuel. Let's dive into it. Hi, Juan. Welcome to the show. How are you doing today?
Selena, I'm doing well. Thank you for having me.
Well, thanks for being here with us. I've been looking forward to this conversation for a while now because your new book, titled Confident by Choice, really does a marvelous job at reframing confidence as something that we build and not something that is innate and something that we're born with. And your work speaks directly to anyone who's ever hesitated, overthought, or felt like they were just not ready. And I think that's pretty much all of us at some point in our lives. I mean, we've all experienced those moments where we're just unsure about how to move forward. So I think the conversation that we're going to have today is going to resonate with a lot of people. And I'm so glad that you're here to engage in it.
Yeah, I'm excited. It's something that I had this idea and this misconception that everyone, at one point in their life deals with confidence. So that really presupposes that there's a certain point that you deal with it and then you get over it, which I actually realized that confidence is a muscle you train, not a destination you reach, and that every next level demands a different version of us. And we're now working with some of the top performers in the world, people that I thought had all of the confidence. I realized, I was like, oh, this never goes away. We just build a better relationship with it. So yeah, I'm really excited for those listening that are maybe at the start of their career or the start of something new or the start of their journey, or people that have sort of a tenured career and they've been in it for a few decades and they want to look at how to get to the next level in their life, or how they see themselves in this new context as a parent for the first time ever. So I think it's just one of those universal skill sets, that it is a skill set that I think more people really need to develop and that we all need a little more of.
Yeah, and highly coveted in the marketplace for sure. I mean, you got to be the top of your game and you got to know what you're doing and what you're saying to really impress people. So
Mhm.
it can bring so many rewards if you can nail us down. So definitely very pertinent. But before we dive into your frameworks, Juan, I want to start with you. So you're known for your high energy talks and your global reach. I mean, in your bio, you said you reached 25,000 people, and that's a pretty staggering number, I must say. So tell us, how did your journey into speaking begin? And how did you personally develop confidence and communication skills that you're now well known for?
Mm. It started as messy as humanly possible, because I'm now this is what I do 60, 70, 80 times a year as a professional speaker, but the one that used to be terrified of speaking. I used to be mortified of speaking in front of 10, 15 people without, I would get the like sweaty palms and the like flushed red face.
Hmm.
And like I would get that. I remember that feeling. And the beginning was really, I remember I was 19 years old and I wanted to give the advice that I wish I got from someone that I would actually listen to, so I was terrified of it. So I was like, okay, I need to go. I realized that if I want to develop mastery in something or excellence in something, it's going to take exposure. It is not going to take reading a book. It is not going to take learning a new mindset. It is not going to take learning a strategy. It's going to be execution for a long enough period of time where then the scary thing becomes normal. So I decided, I was like, I'm going to go speak because I'm terrified of it. I'm going to lean into and run toward the thing that I'm afraid of. And I booked my first keynote, and it was for 100 people at 7 in the morning at a restaurant while they ate breakfast. The mistake that I made was that I didn't ask for the audience demographic, and this
Mm.
100 people were 70 plus years old,
Oh.
senior citizens, and I
Mm.
was 19 years old, and I was there to talk about motivating them. And like, what on earth do you say to motivate someone that is 75 or 85 years old as a 19-year-old kid? And I was like, I have no idea. I don't even know what I talked about, honestly. But then after that, I survived, and then I did another presentation for a vegan restaurant. And I eat meat, and it was like 30 of their team. And then I did a student leadership conference with 25 students. And then it started to sort of have this compounding effect. The first time you do something, it's terrifying. The second time, you're like, okay, I didn't die the first time. I feel like I'm fine. And then the third time, and then the 30th time, and then the 300th time, it's not that it becomes easier, you just get better at handling harder things. So now people will see the stadium events with 25,000 people, or the national conferences, or the Fortune 100 company, and they're like, "Ooh, I want to do that." But their desire is of the end outcome, not the beginning output. And really, the start of that journey was just like having that thing, deciding on it, obsessing about it. I remember I would be studying other speakers on Sunday at
Like
7
who?
p.m. when
Could you name some of
friends.
your favorites?
Oh my gosh. So I honestly, sure, I studied the Tony Robbins, the Brene Browns, the Brendan Burchards, the Les Browns, the Eric Thomases, the Simon Sinek's, all of those, but they actually weren't as as useful of a case study as others. And I'll tell you why, because comparing myself to even Simon Sinek, who at the time was charging, 75 to $100,000 for an hour of his time, that sort of valley, that distance felt so big that I needed to compare myself to someone that was on step 5, not step 500. So I started looking at speakers that were just doing it full time, that built a great business that you had never heard of. And I found a lot of extraordinary people that were doing, that were keynoting some of the biggest companies in the world that you have never heard of, that were charging, 10, 20, $30,000 for a keynote and doing it 100 times a year. And I was like, okay, that's actually pretty cool. Because for me, it was like, I just want to do this thing that I have such a passion for full time. That was the goal. It wasn't like New York Times bestseller. It wasn't millions of people. It was just like the next step. So
That's so cool.
I really just studied those people, and I literally Googled uh keynote speakers, motivational speakers, Toronto, Canada, because that's where I grew up. And the first name that popped up, I clicked on their name. I filled out the form on their website, say, hey, I'm 19. I have a dream of doing this. Can you help? And he decided, Blake, who is a friend to this day, decided to sit down with me at a Starbucks for 3 hours.
Wow.
He booked me one of my first events, which was a mistake. And he gave me sort of everything. He's like, here's exactly what needs to be on your website. Here's how the business works. Here's what to charge. Here's where to start. Here's where to go. And like, he was such a great mentor for me. And then that turned into finding other mentors. And yeah, so I really focused in the beginning in those people that I was on step 0. I wanted to find people on step 5 or step 10. And that was more transformational than anything. You know, people often, I feel like a really big problem right now like in people that are trying to have some form of success is they're like, well, this is what Elon Musk did. And I'm like, he's worth $600 billion.
Yeah.
No one in human history has done that or will do that probably for another few generations.
Hmm.
Like, I have so many friends that will
He's
come
an
to me and be like,
anomaly.
yeah, they are so far from reality. They're
Yeah.
unicorns. Like, you might as well compare yourself to LeBron in playing
Yeah,
basketball.
so kind
Crazy.
of lower your standards so that it serves you. So you make it more achievable, I guess, in the initial stages. Otherwise, it could be overwhelming. It could be intimidating. And you're like, you might just end up quitting because you're like, as you continue to, build your credibility, it's like, I don't think I'll ever get there. And you can just get put off by that.
Yes, and it's not even like lowering your
Yeah,
standard
I
because
know
if you
that's not
have
the
a
right way
big
of putting
dream,
it.
if you have a
Yes.
big dream, go for it, but it's find the next step. Don't compare yourself. If you're making, 50 grand a year, be like, well, this billionaire gave me this advice. They wake up at 5, so I should. I'm like, what about the person that is just ahead of you? Like find that person. Don't, if you're trying to get in great shape, don't go to the person that just won Mr. Olympia. Go to the person that's in extraordinary shape that figured
Yeah.
it out. So yeah,
Yeah.
making a more intentional jump in progress. Not this, like you said, you nailed it in that it becomes so daunting that people are like,
Yeah.
not even gonna try, not even gonna
Not
go
even
for it.
gonna try. Right, right. Oh,
Yeah.
that is so key. Um, I'm curious, Juan, what was the kind of self-talk going on in your head in the earlier nascent stages of your speaking career? Because I would imagine as a 19-year-old, you're probably really nervous, right? What was the kind of internal dialogue going in your mind that pushed you into those scary places and even convinced you to keep going after having a very uncomfortable situation with the seniors for your first talk?
Yeah, probably pretty awful. Honestly, people are like, people assume it's like, oh, you probably had a really good mindset that helped you get through that. And it's like, I think I got through it despite the mindset, not because the narratives in my head for most of the time were, what are you doing here? You really think you could do this? That you have no reason to be doing this. You should probably quit. This speech, this one that you booked, is probably the last one you'll ever book. And the thing is, those thoughts still to this day, I will come up with reasons as to why this isn't going to work. They're going to figure you out. You surely can't make this last. This momentum that you're building, that's temporary. That's finite. You're not going to be able to hold on to it because that, and something I talk about in my keynotes is this fact that they did a study that found 80% of our thoughts every single day are negative. 95 are repeated from the day before. So you got to fight for those 20%. And the challenge is that one criticism or one discouragement or one rejection weighs far more than 10 compliments or 10 wins. So we actually, and I've found that a lot of people will discount their wins and magnify their losses. And for me, it's like, oh yeah, like I did a few at the beginning of this year. I did a few sales kickoffs, national conferences for like Lindt Chocolate and Fidelity and Remax and Allstate and Nationwide and Baker Tilly and like a ton of companies that if you told me 18 months ago I'd be working with, I'd be like, you are crazy. And I remember when I booked Lindt, for example, which has been like I grew up on Lindt chocolate. My mom, like, it's her favorite chocolate ever, is this whole thing. And I remember when I booked it, I'm like, this is cool, but this will probably be the last really cool company that I do. Like, so it's sort of, we have that narrative in our head that discounts the successes and the wins. And this year, I've literally been learning to be like, no, this is awesome, period. Like, full stop. This is great, amazing. Moving on.
Yeah.
Not justifying the win with a potential doomsday scenario that may come next.
Yeah. And I think that takes a certain amount of courage. And I know you speak about courage in your book. It is, in fact, a big theme in your work. And you talk about incorporating intentional discomfort, which is what we have been talking about all this time, right? Just making sure you put yourself in those uncomfortable situations so that you continue to grow those muscles
Mhm.
and you feel more and more comfortable as you expose yourself to these environments that challenge you to become a better version of yourself. So, I'd like to know how do we build that practice of continually um, putting ourselves in those kind of places where, we prefer not to go, but we know that if we do a certain thing, if we do a certain project, if we go to a certain place, we can take our growth to the next level.
Mm. Yeah, because success doesn't always beget more success. Sometimes it begets complacency. I find that sometimes when we have a certain level of success, we actually downshift and we coast. We're like, we're good here and we're okay. We made it. We did it. And then we lose that drive that we had at the beginning that got us here. So I think and I talk about this concept of practicing courage because courage is not a destination similar to confidence, not a destination you reach. It's a muscle you train. So how do we train it? We have to understand that what we need to focus on and prioritize is acting based on the goals that we have, not based on the way that we feel. And I find that most people act based on the way that they feel. I'm tired, so I'm going to act in alignment with that. I'm discouraged, so I'm going to act in alignment with that. I'm good, so I'm going to act in alignment with that. You got to define, here are the goals that I have, and here's how I want to grow. Now, what am I doing to schedule? I literally tell people to do this, like schedule discomfort. Like schedule the thing every single week that challenges you. And if you do not have that thing that you are challenged by or feel uncomfortable about, then you are basically saying, I'm not valuing my own growth. Like if we want to grow, we need to consistently step outside of our comfort zone and say that this is something that I'm going to try. So I think it's even as simple as like trying new things. Even if in your organization you're like, I just feel like I'm stuck in a rut. I hear that a lot of times from professionals that are in their career, maybe early to mid career, and like I just feel kind of stuck. And I'm like, so what are you doing that's different? That
Mhm.
creates sort of a dynamic version of your week? Like, how are you challenging yourself in work? Are you raising your hand and contributing in the meeting with newer
Mhm.
people that makes you feel nervous? Are you taking on that project that you're unsure that you're able to make happen? Are you nervous about meeting new people because you just moved to a new city and you want to make new friends but you don't know how? How many new people are you saying hi to every single week? So I think courage is something to be scheduled. And it's
Mhm.
something that, when you look at your calendar, is it representative of the best of who you are? If it's not, I
Mhm.
think something may need to change.
Yeah, and this goes back to, the heart of confidence by choice. That
Hmm.
confidence is not something that you're born with. It's not something that's in your DNA. It is something that you cultivate over time through doing these kind of things, by being daring, by being bold. And I honestly think that is such a sense of relief for certain types of people, like introverts or people who have been considered shy their whole life. I'm one of them. I was extremely shy as a child, as a teenager, and that's something I had to grow out of by choosing to do things that were scary. And I've lived through that. That's a testament to the whole notion that confidence is something that you choose through the actions that you take in your life.
100%. It's the biggest, I think, relief, like you said, I think that's a really good word to use for people, is understanding that they are 6 months away from a completely different version of who they are and how they see themselves. That if you see yourself with a lack of confidence today, that does not mean that you are going to have that tomorrow. I think that's one of the like most beautiful things and most exciting parts of life. It's like you can decide, regardless of how bad the decision you made was, regardless if you ate the full box of cookies, regardless if you slept in when you set 5 alarms at 5 and at 6 and at 7 and you woke up at 9 feeling defeated. There's a new day.
Mm,
I think the best part about life is that life is broken up into these bite-sized pieces called days and nights. That if you have a new day tomorrow, regardless of all of the terrible decisions you made today, and
mm.
I talk to a lot of people that have just felt so defeated by life because of some of the decisions that they made. Maybe they
Yeah.
cheated, or they gave into a vice, or they went back to the drug, or they did something that they felt like defined them. I'm like, hey, that was last week. That was yesterday. That was the past few months. But the past does not determine the future unless we decide to live in that past. So I think the
Yeah.
most exciting opportunity is that belief or confidence or courage is a decision that you can make today moving forward. The challenge is a lot of people live based on what happened the past 6 months. That that's
Yeah.
what you see so
And you make
often.
such an important point about people who have made choices that kind of lower their confidence in themselves. And that kind of
Mhm.
calcifies over the years. I've seen
Yes.
they lose hope. They
Mhm.
stop trusting themselves.
Mhm.
And to break that sort of that negative self belief, it can take some work, especially for older people who have become really cynical and they're like, why even try?
Mhm. 100. I think the point is so true. You start to lose trust in yourself. Confidence, I talk about this idea that confidence is the process of making a promise to yourself and then keeping it consistently over an extended period of time. But if you keep breaking that promise, if you say, I'm going to work out, and then you don't, and then you say, well, I'm going to work out tomorrow, and then you don't, and then you say, I'm going to work out on Friday, and then you don't, and then you keep on saying that, after a few months, you're like, do you even believe a word that you say? And you start to not even believe yourself. So we need to give ourselves proof that we are who we say we are and start stacking up evidence to build a strong case for belief. In that, if you say you're going to do something and then you do it, you're like, whoa,
You know,
I can actually trust myself. The challenge is we break more promises to ourselves than we'll break to anyone else. If I say I'm going to go meet a friend for dinner at 7 p.m., I or you or almost anyone listening here would
hmm
not just stand them up without telling them. Wouldn't
hmm
just decide, like knowingly, I'm not going to show up to this dinner because you care about your friend. So do you not care about yourself? Do you not care about your own commitment? But sometimes it's like, I'm going to commit to this goal. And then in your own mind, you have the conversation of like, yeah, I'm not going to do that. So you're basically standing yourself up at dinner. You're basically just saying, like, yeah, I'm going to do that. I'll be there. I'll be there 7 p.m. Great, at that restaurant. And then you don't show up. So is that friend or that goal going to trust you? Probably not. If
hmm
we could just be as trustworthy and as committed to ourselves than we are to our friends and to our family, like bare minimum, not even like a really committed person, like most people, if you have a lunch or a meeting or a date, you're not just going to not show up. That's just being a decent human being. So why do you not show up for yourself?
Hello, everyone. I'm excited to announce the upcoming launch of my new book titled The Nomadic Soul, a seeker's guide to finding a sense of self and belonging in the modern world, which highlights a profound yet often unexplored part of your identity that holds the key to everything from answering your biggest questions to finding deeper meaning and joy in everyday life. Visit thenomadicsoulbook.com to learn more, download a free chapter, or to buy a copy. You talk about microproofs and kind of building a sort of portfolio of experiences where you can refer to so that you know that you can do a certain thing, that you can achieve a certain goal because you've done it before. You are
Yes.
reliable. You can bank on yourself. Tell us about microproof because I really find that concept interesting.
Yeah, I think the process of building confidence is really like solidified in giving yourself evidence that you are who you say you are. Why do we have certain beliefs about things? Our beliefs really are shaped by our past experiences. And many times those past experiences are negative, so it shapes beliefs that are in alignment with that. So, for example, public speaking, which, 75% of the world population has glossophobia, which is the fear of speaking in front of groups. Why? For the most part, they have had an experience in front of a group that was scary, that went a certain way, that they had a physiological reaction because we're terrified of being judged. So the next time they go to do that thing, they're actually approaching that with the memory of what happened in the past. The thing is, if you have enough good experiences, the good proof, it gives you evidence to say, I think this is going to go well. If, for example, if you give 100 presentations and 95 go well, you're like, on a presentation 101, you're kind of like, yeah, I think this is going to go well.
Yeah,
Because
you're at cruising altitude at that point. So
you have enough evidence. And I
yeah.
think people don't give themselves enough evidence to reinforce who they are. That's why I think 30-day challengers are so ineffective, because 30 days of proof is not nearly enough. Do people say it's like it takes 21 days to build a habit? That is actually not true. That has been debunked. There's been studies that have gone up to even 144 days. So I think the 30-day challenge, people do it and they think they're going to be a new person. It's like you need to give yourself way more. It's a good start, but you need to give yourself way more evidence to say that I'm going to show up every single day committing to this thing so that over time you can then look back and say, wow, yeah, I think I am. I think I am that. If you're kind to everyone almost every day for years on end, you're going to start to kind of believe that you're a kind person because you have enough proof.
Yeah. And it becomes part of
So,
your identity, right?
yes,
And you talk about how
yes.
you should make confidence part of your identity as opposed to something that you feel occasionally. And I think that is very powerful.
Yeah, I think identity is one of the most transformative things that we have access to tap into. There's, I talk about this idea of crossing the identity threshold, where when does something that you do become a part of who you are? Like early on, I remember I was always this overweight kid, and it was always like 20 or 30 pounds. But then it got to a point where I turned to food in amidst challenges and to hide, and I developed binge eating disorder, and which is basically like eating until you're full and then eating after you're full because it just didn't fill the void. And I got to a place where I was 75 pounds overweight, obese, and then I felt like there was no way out of this. And I realized, and I was like, there reached a point where I was like, enough is enough. Something needs to change. And I decided, I was like, I'm going to reclaim this. I'm going to do something about this. And I lost, basically, long and the short, I lost the weight, lost the 75 pounds. And for about a year, I still felt like the overweight kid. I know it's hard to like, and even though I was in a healthy body fat percentage, like it's hard to understand for someone that hasn't been there, but
I have. I can relate.
I literally felt
Yeah,
overweight still. I
I
literally
understand.
felt like I
Hmm.
still had that because it felt like just something I was doing, not someone that I was, someone that I became. And I think over time and identity to change how you see yourself now, if I told my friends that I was like, yeah, I'm not gonna work out, I just am not feeling it today, they would be like, what have you done? This is an AI. You've kidnapped our friend. What is going on? Like, because it's now a part of who I am, which what happens is when it starts to become a part of your identity, other
Yeah.
people reinforce that.
So I'm a
Oh, of
fit,
course,
healthy person who respects my body and will do whatever it takes to, feel my best and look my best.
a
But
hundred percent.
that was your new identity.
Yes. And I think parts of that can still come back. One of my favorite movie franchises is Marvel. And in one of the movies, in Doctor Strange, the Ancient One has one of my favorite quotes, is that we never get rid of our demons, we just learn to live above them. And I think a lot of people have challenges and trauma and things that were from years ago that kind of still walk with them to this day. But I don't think that's something to say like that's not who I am anymore. Like I still feel that overweight, that like kid who would eat until he was overfull, but I'm in the driver's seat now, and this new version of me is the one that is here. I've learned to live above that. I've learned to live beyond that. And I think there's something to be said of like I talk about this idea that you'll never outperform your self-image. And that change really starts by changing the way you see yourself. And that the psychology of personalities talks about this, where we have different sort of personalities or personas in different context with your intimate relationship versus your friends versus work versus with yourself. You're kind of different people. Like you bring a different person to that field of play. So if we can decide like who do I want that person to be, not what do I want that person to do, not like I want to be more consistent, like I am, like you said, I am a consistent person. I'm a healthy person. So what does a healthy person do? I'm a successful person. So what does a successful person do? I'm an organized person. So what does an organized person do? So rooting it in identity versus activity is, I find, far more powerful, and it gives you far more longevity in what you're trying to do.
Hmm. But confidence is not always all encompassing, right? Someone can be confident in their career, but they
Mhm.
can have really low confidence in their personal life. And I'm sure you've seen that contrast a lot in the work that you do. So, how do we integrate ourselves and make sure that we can be confident in all contexts, all situations?
Great question. And it is so true. And I see it all the time. We have different levels of self-esteem or self-efficacy, which are sort of different. Self-esteem is the way you see yourself. Self-efficacy is the belief in your ability to do something. So it's your skill sets, your talent. Esteem is your sort of self-image. So I've run into a lot of people that have a level 10 in their career, but a level 2 in relationships, or vice versa, or a level 10 in their career, level 2 in health. And the way to do that and to really balance the scales, because we got to see, let's get all of our fields of play up and improving and growing. And I think one of the most effective ways is to borrow belief from one area and superimpose it onto another.
Hmm.
Meaning, if you're at a level 10 confidence in your career, why? Study it. Upset. What have you done there that has resulted? Because I guarantee you have done a series of things that have led you to believe in your competence, to believe in who you are in this role. If you're confident as a parent, what have you done? I can bet you have done something different than you've done in the area of your life that's at a two. If in your career, you're constantly investing, you're growing, you're learning how to get better, you're reaching out to other people to be mentors to you, you're going the extra mile. Okay, great. Take that, put in your health. Where are the mentors here? Are you going the extra mile? Are you doing everything you can to improve this area? And you find it's like, be this person over here and borrowing, because if you already have a high level of belief in one area, it proves that you know how to do it. You
Okay.
know how to invest in that area. So let's just borrow some of the strategies you've used over here, and let's just use them over here. And people are like,
Okay,
Oh,
so let me
yeah.
give you a scenario because I'm not sure if it's all the skills are transferable. For instance, if a
Yes.
woman, she is a go-getter and she is like the top of her game in her job, right?
Mhm.
She's got a really high position and she's got a lot of people working for her. But in her personal life, in her dating life, she may come across as someone who is overbearing, too masculine, and guys get intimidated by her. They find her a bit too much. And over time, she finds herself not being able to have successful dates. It doesn't go well. And she accumulates all those experiences that kind of prove that, she's not as competent in that area. So how would she be able to develop confidence in her personal life?
One great question. One, because, and I've had this like pretty often, especially with female executives, because it's a big challenge where you are crushing it in your career and doing really well, and then a man comes into that and they're like, whoa, I'm intimidated. And what it does is it causes this sort of reverse polarity where the woman is in her masculine and then it pushes the guy to be in his feminine. And then they wonder why it doesn't work. The first thing is to identify and define who do you want to be in that area of your life? Of course, when you're in your career, if you're crushing it, if you're like, I get things done, I make things happen, that's a very different energy than what you need to bring to the relationship. So the challenge there is that you're bringing the exact same person over here to over there. We want to bring what you have done in the sense that if in your career, what has worked really well is that you go above and beyond, you really show up. What does really showing up look like for your partner? So, for example, for me in my career, I speak to audiences from anywhere from a few hundred to a few thousand. It's high adrenaline, high dopamine, high impact. I need to own the room, especially in a room of 1,000 executives that are all Fortune 1,000 companies, and I'm 31. So I need to bring a certain energy there. That is not the energy I need to bring to my relationship with my wife. Very different. So I need to decide who do I want to be in this context? That's the first thing. The second is to not jump to the conclusion too early, thinking that you intimidate the wrong partners. Because I have friends that are super successful in their career, female founders, entrepreneurs, execs, and they just didn't find the right person yet. So instead of sort of bending and molding who you think you need to be in that context, really decide who would I like to be in a relationship? Do I want to be that bubbly, feminine, free flowing version of myself? Great. Then I need to really step into that context in this arena. But if I'm like, I'm that high driver, I want someone that wants to get the most out of life, I want to crush it. I don't think we should change that. And I think
Yeah.
you just find the right person that isn't going to be intimidated by that, that's even more masculine than you are. So it pushes you into your feminine and keeps you there, but it may take a little more trial and error. So I think the most important thing is finding and defining who you want to be on that field of play, who you want to be when you're at work, when you're a parent, when you're a partner, when you're a friend, because a lot of times you got to bring a different version of yourself to each of those areas, but you can still borrow some things from the area that's worked really well to an area that needs improvement.
Hmm.
That's a great
Excellent
point.
answer. So what I'm hearing is don't shrink. Like find
Yes,
people who would support you and encourage you to be yourself.
100%.
Find the right people, the right community, the right environments that can nurture you and that would applaud you for the traits that you really appreciate in yourself. That's a
100%.
very
100%.
empowering take.
Yeah, because I think a lot of people try and chameleon or mold themselves into the version of what they think other people want.
Hmm,
And it is almost a guaranteed to feel out of alignment, like a complete imposter. And
absolutely.
it's people pleasing. It's
Yeah.
thinking that they need to be a certain way to fit into the mold of what people want. And almost every time you're wrong, you actually don't know what people want. And number two, people actually appreciate authenticity far more than they appreciate just pandering to what someone thinks that they want. So I think the hardest thing to do is to be yourself in every context. You know, Miles Davis, the famous jazz musician, said it took me 10 years to learn to play like myself.
Mm,
And it takes time. It's hard to be yourself I have a lot of friends that are dating right now, and it's hard for them to be themselves in that new relationship. I have a lot of friends that are getting into the speaking industry. It's hard for them to be themselves on stage. It's hard. But you just
yeah,
got to practice and decide I'm going to bring this person to this
yeah,
world, to this role.
right. And do you find that it gets a bit harder, especially when you involve emotions, because then your physiology gets impacted and it really can be a key driver in how you show up?
Mhm.
Um, I'd love to hear more about that, the role of physiology and your emotions
Yeah,
in mustering the courage and being more confident.
we are highly emotional as people. Anyone that says like I'm emotionless, I'm a Navy SEAL, I don't feel anything is honestly just probably trying to heal something that happened to them years ago. Because everyone is emotional. There's going to be things that bother you, that annoy you for. I don't know if you've ever had this where you're just annoyed for no reason and you literally can't decide what is annoying you or anxious for no reason.
Yeah.
Like I've had moments where I'm like, and I'll look at my heart rate and I'm like, there's no reason for this to be happening right now. But I'm like, I'm anxious or I feel worried about something. Or I'm like, what is that? So I don't think of those are things to shy away from. I think it's something to acknowledge, but then to act alongside it, not let that determine your action. Most people let their feelings determine what they do. I'm scared, so I'm not going to go for it. I'm nervous, so I'm probably going to reserve myself. I'm worried or I'm angry, so I'm going to explode at this person. As opposed to I'm anxious, or I'm
Hmm.
worried, or I'm nervous. Great. Let's move with that anxiety. Let's move with those nerves. Let's move with that fear. You know, and a lot of times what holds people back is the fear of not only failure, but failing in front of people. And what we found, and they literally did brain scans that found fear and courage coexist in the brain. It's
Yeah, I found that
exactly
very
the same
interesting. Yes.
experience, like
Yeah.
one and the same. So it's actually not about overcoming your fears. Whenever I hear that, I think it's such terrible advice. It's about building a better relationship with them. It's about building a better relationship with the things that you're afraid of and saying,
Mm.
like, yeah, I'm terrified of this. Yeah, I have this emotion. I'm feeling this viscerally. Like my first 50 presentations, I would literally get super sweaty palms. My throat would dry up. I would take sips of water, nothing would work. And I would get like hot flashes and I would literally feel a pit in my stomach, like physiological response. And I didn't make it so that, oh, this is what's wrong. What's wrong with me? What's happening? I'm like, these are just, this is just excitement in a weird way. Just take this, use it. Like my first stadium event with 10,000 people in a 360 stadium. It was terrible. It was like a little platform and 10,000 people 3 stories up. I think I was like 24 at the time. And I was mortified. Mortified. I had to do push-ups. I had to skip. I had to like do anything I could to kind of shake the nerves off. And then once you're in it, you're in it. So I think emotions, whether good or bad, are a partner. They are meant to be a partner, not a nemesis, not an enemy, not an opponent. People see their emotions oftentimes as an opponent. I see them as a partner. I'm like, yeah, come along for the ride. Anxiety, worry, blame, fatigue, exhaustion. Let's go.
Yeah. But do you find that it impairs your cognitive ability in the past? Like if you were super nervous and you felt like you were panicking, how were you able to prevent that from happening, where it can just completely overtake you? You can forget your lines or what you intended to say. How were you able to overcome that if
Great
it
question.
happened
And
to
it's
you?
yes, and it's funny because I there was an innate fear. Of what? Of messing up, of it not going well. And what they actually found in the research of like flow state, which is essentially this heightened state of consciousness, your
Mm.
heightened state of focus, you're locked into something, time slows down, you actually perform at a significantly higher level when you're in flow. And Dr. Zikmahili, who basically invented the term, and then Dr. Stephen Kotler, who wrote The Rise of Superman, and Flow is the actual book. It's a hard read, but it's extraordinary. What they found is that the number one way to get in flow is, and the number one, like, uh, emotion or thing that was present to get people into flow was risk. That's why professional athletes and surfers and base jumpers and skydivers get into flow immediately. Because when your nervous system has the option between flow or death, it chooses flow. So I realized that the fear, actually, when I would go to perform, because if there's a keynote at 10 a.m., there's a keynote at 10 a.m. Like I can't,
Mhm.
they spent $5 million on this event. I can't move the date. Like I am forced to do this. So the forcing mechanism actually really helped because as soon as I started, it's not that the fear went away, it's that it was such an engaged experience and I was so in flow that the fear became a partner and didn't really matter. And then I read the book after and I realized
Mhm.
they're like the number one thing to get you in flow is risk.
Yeah.
And the fear of losing something is an innate risk. So now I like pursue risk because that is almost a guaranteed surefire way of being in flow. You got something on the line. You may lose something. There's something to lose here. That is what allows human beings to perform at a level they didn't even think was possible.
So
Yeah.
getting into a state of flow, is it also because you were passionate about speaking and that you wanted to create impact by going on stage?
Yeah, I think there was a element that I like, if you care enough about something, you will override the negative emotion that's keeping you from it.
Yeah.
You know?
I asked
Like if
because
you
that's how I felt about podcasting. I too
yeah,
was
if you
terrified in the beginning. So, but it was just this passion and wanting to interact with people who are smart and
Mhm.
who I can learn from and people who I feel would really contribute to my community. That helped me override the fear and the concerns about messing up, especially in the earlier stages. Now I've done over 250 interviews. So now I'm good.
Yeah, I
Yeah.
honestly I think if you care about something enough,
Hmm.
it will override the emotion that was keeping you from doing it.
Hmm.
It'll override the fear for sure.
Yeah. Yeah. I want to quickly touch on the confidence cycle because that is at the heart of what you teach in your book. And you include different components: micro energy, micro courage, micro action. So, can you please break that down for us?
So there's really, two things that come before confidence that I realized is that because I was like, why is it that the research on confidence really talks about this idea of the more competence you build, the more confident you'll feel. The more confident you feel, the more likely you are to build competence. It's called the confidence competent loop. And I was like, okay, that makes sense. Why does nobody do it? Why does nobody use it? And I realized that the reason is because there's two steps before. You will not put in the time to build competence at something if you're too tired or you're afraid. If you don't have the energy for it and you don't decide to pour the energy in, or you're terrified, you lack courage, you're not even going to get to the competence step. So really, it's there's the first step, which is I see it as like the spark to confidence, which is generating energy in anything you want to build confidence in. You have to give energy to that area of life. Period. Full like you need to give it energy, meaning your focus, your attention, your commitment. That needs to happen, which then facilitates courage, which is essentially your willingness to put yourself into the moment of fear. It's the willingness to expose yourself once you have built enough courage. You then take action, which is the doing the thing. It's giving the presentation. It's going to say hi to the girl or guy that you were nervous about approaching, but you really want to. Then that either ends in success or failure, which gives you proof, which gives you, oh, I actually did that and it worked.
Hmm.
Or I actually did that and yeah, sure, I failed or I got rejected, but at least I tried. At least I went for it. So if more people could just decide, and then once you have enough proof, it's like, oh, I'm going to pour more energy into this. And it was really just reverse engineering what I did in terms of the speaking world, where I was like, I'm going to pour energy into this. That's going to facilitate some courage. Then it's going to allow me to take some action. That's going to give me proof. That proof is going to facilitate more energy poured into this. And then you start taking that cycle over and over and over again. And over time, it shows you it's like, whoa, I've kind of in any area of well, I want to date more. I got to give more energy to this. I got to go on more dates. I got to get into the arena. I
Yeah.
want to get my finances better. I
Yeah.
need to look at my numbers. I need
Right.
to invest energy into that as opposed to avoiding and hoping that the credit card statement isn't at a level that I don't want it to be, you know?
Yeah, thanks for explaining that very well. Just to ground this, can you give us an example of a client you worked with who applied this model really well?
Yeah, a few. I'll give you what's a good relevant example because I had one recently. I'm thinking if I'm able to share. Uh, yeah, there was one, and I think this is a really, especially in time of year,
Mhm.
there's that new year energy, and a lot of people
Absolutely.
have goals for getting in shape.
Hmm.
And there was a client that I had
Hmm.
that was terrified of
Okay.
going to the gym. They were terrified of going to the gym. They were terrified of tracking any food, of eating healthy because they thought, and it's not even it's crazy because we have all these beliefs that are based on the experiences that we had that can derail what we're really trying to do. And they had these beliefs about eating healthy, that eating healthy is for people that are superficial, that only care about themselves, and that working out was similar and that life should be enjoyed, and all of these beliefs that some were okay, some were good, some were bad, but it was keeping them in that place. And I'm like, well, is this something that you really want to change? And they were at a point where they're like, yeah, this is something I want to change, but I feel like just my I kind of get into this avoidant place. And I was like, okay, so the first step is really like we've got to generate energy towards this area of life, and you got to pour some energy into this. You've got to give it focus, attention, presence into this area. So for the first week, all I want you to do is keep a diary of everything that you eat. That is it. Don't change anything. Just give it energy. Like just a 1% shift, just give it energy. And the next week we met, and she basically was like, oh my God, I cannot believe. And we're looking at it. She's like, I cannot believe this is what my life looked like in a week. Because pouring energy in gave her awareness. And I was like, okay, so what's the move here? This is on you. And she said, because we talked about the courageous step of what she was going to need to do, of getting into the arena, of getting into the moment. And we needed to do it incrementally. And then I was like, how about she hadn't worked out in probably 6 months. And I was like, in terms of workouts, like what do you want to do? And she was like, I'm terrified of going to the gym because I feel like everyone judges me. I'm like, okay. So what about if you were just get into that moment, just to decide you're gonna go and walk into the gym and just walk around, maybe grab some water, get on the treadmill for 5 minutes. That's a tiny action, a micro action. And she could say, so the next week she went to the gym, she got on the treadmill, she was gonna do 5 minutes, she did 30. And she took the action, which gave her like, I didn't even know I could do that. So it gave her a little bit of proof to say, like, whoa, and I wasn't really judged and I didn't die and no one really cared. So the next week, I decided to pour more energy in. I was like, I think I want to go like 3 times this week. And I think I
Hmm.
actually want to dial back on what I'm eating. And then all of those decisions started to compound
Yeah.
on each other, you know? And that was,
And she built
six
momentum over
real
time.
momentum. And that was 6, 7 months ago. And she like is always a low week is going to the gym four
Yeah.
days a week, you know?
Yeah.
So yeah, but it was the little thing to say, okay, this is an area of life that I want to improve.
Yeah.
Let me pour
That's a
some energy
great
in.
example and very relatable. It's like, you know, the that metaphor of a rocket that needs that extra fuel to take off, but once it's up in the air, um, it can keep going, yeah, because it has that initial push. But it's that initial push that requires the most energy, the most fuel.
100%.
Yeah.
100%.
Juan, you've given us so much great information here, but if there's one thing that you would like listeners to take away from this interview, what would that be?
I think it would be that where you are today is a result of the decisions, the actions, the beliefs, the habits that you have built and committed to over the last 6 months. So if you don't like where you are in a certain area of your life, move. You are not a tree. You can decide to be different. You don't have roots in where you are. You can decide to, I'm going to change this. So looking at the next 6 months, at the next year of your life, realize that no one is going to change your life for you. That no one is coming. Sure, you can have support systems. Sure, you can have family. You can have amazing friends. You can have people. You can have mentors, coaches, personal trainers, all of it. But it is on you. You are the one that needs to show up for your life because if you don't, no one really will. So commit to the best of who you are, to the goals that you have, to the things that you want to pursue, and you would be surprised at what it'll create in a year's time.
We all have the power within us.
100%. 100%.
Yes. Well, Juan, thank you so much. This has been such a rich conversation that I know many people will resonate with. Your work gives people permission to stop waiting until they feel ready and instead take ownership of their confidence and just go for it.
100%.
Thank you
Yes.
for that. All right.
Absolutely.
And I want to let our listeners and viewers know if you want to go deeper on this topic and you want to grab a copy of Juan's book, Confident by Choice, The Three Small Decisions That Build Everyday Courage, you can find it on his website, juanbendaña.com. The link is in the description. And you'll also find out more information about his workshops and his speaking events.